I'm good, thank you. How are you both?
Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh,
We will kick things off quickly if that's okay,
yeah, of
because
course.
today is our first masterclass with our first coach, Rachael Clark, who is mum and performance coach supporting mothers to navigate the juggle of work and motherhood. Through her one-to-one coaching and workshops, she helps parents to feel calm, confident, and in control through their journey. So, welcome, Rachael. Thanks for
Thank
joining us.
you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for asking me to join you. It's a privilege.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So, you are going to be talking through today the back to work with confidence and 3 essential shifts for parents. So, that would include confidence in your new identity, which is
Mhm.
important to me, confidence to advocate for what you need once you're back in the workplace, and confidence to make the juggle actually work.
Mhm.
So, can't wait to hear more. You can kick it off. Go
Okay.
ahead, tell us all about confidence in your new identity, Rachael.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, just to start it off with, confidence is one of the biggest things that I speak with mothers and parents about in their return to work and when they're in the depths of like the juggle already of work and being a parent. And I think, one of the big reasons that can happen, there's many, many reasons, but when we're going through an immense amount of change and when there's a lot of unpredictability, it can cause us to feel incredibly overwhelmed, stretched, tired, overlooked a lot of the times. And so, our confidence has a real hit from that, and it can slowly erode if we're not careful and if we're not being, aware of that and acknowledging it and doing things to consciously try to support ourselves with it. These 3 points I wanted to choose today because I think they're three key elements that are really important to focus on when you're returning into work, but not just when you're returning, like if you've been back for a long time as well. These are 3 things that if you tap into and really acknowledge that and do some work around, it can really help with how you feel you're able to show up to work and at home and for yourself as well. So the first one, as you said, was confidence with your new identity. And I know you ladies will agree, like when we're back at work, we're not the same woman, and parents in general, whoever's taken the break, we're not the same people as we were once before we've had children. And I think a lot of the time, unfortunately, that can be seen and felt as though it's a weakness and it puts us on the back foot. But it's really important for us to actually step into how powerful that is, the fact that we aren't the same, because we've evolved so incredibly, in every sort of way, emotionally, physically, hormonally, socially, every single way we've changed. But what can often happen is we sort of plan so much for everything else. We plan when we go back to work, we plan for how the baby's going to be or how the children are going to be, and who's looking after them. We plan for what is happening with our partner potentially. We plan for our support network and what they need to feel set up to be there for us as well. We plan for what work needs from us, but we don't really think about like how do we feel within all of this? How have we changed? What's it like to go back and step into that workplace? So it can feel that transition can be incredibly hard. Your identity can feel lost. You can feel really uncertain about who you are now. There's a huge shift in your priorities and your responsibilities. And also you're dealing with the emotional highs and the lows of all of that as well, and the overwhelm and that pressure as well to kind of step back in and bounce back and just sort of hit the ground running. So the first thing that I always recommend and talk through with a lot of my clients before anything else in your return to work is thinking about what your new identity looks like and how you've evolved, and really taking time to pause before you do anything else, before you think about anyone else. It's think about how you've changed. Because if you can step back into work feeling sure within yourself and who you are and who you stand for, then you can step back in with sort of purpose and an intention, as opposed to stepping back in feeling, lost and confused and feeling put upon type thing. So ways to do that just a few tips is just simply pausing and reflecting and asking yourself questions like how has motherhood shaped me? You know, what has changed within me personally, professionally, mentally, emotionally? What are all the changes that I've seen, and how have I evolved within that? You know, what do my strengths now look like? What skills have I grown over time? Because let's face it, we've built so many skills, and we need to realize that actually those are so transferable into the workplace as well. So really ask yourself, what has changed? What does my inner strengths what inner strengths have kind of come up to the surface? But also not just what has changed, but why are you returning back to work? Like, really think about what is that purpose for you, because a purpose can feel like a real anchor when the doubt creeps in, when the mum guilt creeps in as well. If you understand your why for being back in work, then that can really help as a driving force. And that why will have changed as well, you know, as to, you know, why you're showing up for work. It might be because you want the independence. It might be obviously financially, but it might also be to grow your career. Like there's different whys as to why we want to be back. And it's really identifying what that looks like now after you've had a baby. And what matters to you most as well. A question around that, like what values really matter to you, and what's going to really help to create that kind of work-life juggle that you're really wanting to sustainably have and positively have, and that return to work that's positive. So that first kind of tip on that confidence is really starting with you, starting with what your new identity looks like. And those questions there: how has motherhood shaped me? What is my why for returning to work? And what matters most to me now? Those are the types of questions that are going to help you to gain that reflection and then confidently step back in with intention. Okay.
That's really helpful, Rachel, because I know, I mean, I wish I had met you before everything, because it is that intentional piece, which I think is so
Yeah.
important. Often, like you say, we often get put to the bottom of the pile. We often don't think about ourselves, everything else does. So it's about using those tips and intentionally looking inward and thinking, why am I doing this? What am I bringing forward? We actually have a question from our audience, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind. So
Yeah.
the question is how to ease back in so it's not overwhelming and you don't feel like you're being lazy. So essentially, this person, I think they want to step their toe back into their career, and they're feeling like that's what they want to do, but they don't want to do it, so it's too much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is a really good point, and actually comes up in one of the tips that I've got. So maybe I'll jump to answer this. Maybe I'll jump to the third point that I was going to talk about, which is all about the confidence to like make the juggle work. Yeah. Because I talk about this about how can we break it down and ease back in, really, so that like they're saying that, so they're not feeling overwhelmed, sorry. So I think, you know, when to this person's point, we do want to feel at ease. I mean, it's incredibly overwhelming, this experience. You've gone through a whole amount of change in stepping into parenthood. Your life is kind of completely flipped, and then you're also going back into a workplace where you've been out of for quite a bit of time, and we know how quickly that can change as well. So it's a double whammy there with you're being sort of faced with. And so one of the hardest parts of that return to work and just of the juggle in itself is when we don't feel like we've got control, you know, when we feel like we're spinning so many plates, and a lot of those plates don't even feel like they're stable as well. So it can feel, even the simplest of things can feel really impossible, I think, the simplest of tasks. So a way of really easing that and easing yourself back into work is to look for ways to make this as sustainable as possible, I think, because as I said, there's so many plates that you are spinning that you can very easily become quickly overwhelmed. And when you get overwhelmed, then your emotional, you know, your emotions become really overwhelmed in themselves. The irrational thoughts start, and then your performance then all gets impacted as well, and you become stuck in this vicious cycle. So it's finding a way to really make this sustainable, make it feel as easy and as smooth as possible. And I know that sounds a bit bizarre because you think, well, there's nothing easy about motherhood and work. It feels like a challenge a lot of the time, but there are ways of doing it. So first of all, I would say have a think about when you're in that moment when things are feeling very overwhelming, think about what can I control within this moment, really break it down. So it's not thinking about your first, if we apply it to someone who's going back into work, in this next week, don't think about your first month. Don't think about your first 3 months. Just think about, first of all, like, what does day one look like? What does week one look like? What does the night before look like? Just break it down really small so that it feels a little bit more manageable, and you're dealing with the now and the immediate, as opposed to thinking about the real massive picture, which can quite easily consume us and make us feel quite scared, I think, because there's so much involved. So think about what is in your control. Another thing that can really help with easing yourself in is looking at and assessing what's your mental load looking like, because that mental load is that's those silent things that are going on in the background in your mind, where you're thinking about preparing for, anticipating for, the things that you're doing, all these things that are going on that you're holding up mentally and you're doing quietly, they go unnoticed and they become incredibly stressful and overwhelming. So another way of easing this is thinking about, how can I manage that mental load and delegate and let go where possible, because it isn't all for you to do. And I think we do become really conditioned, especially women, and as mothers, we become conditioned to think that it's all on our shoulders and that we need to do it all and we've got the answers. And I know a lot of the mums I speak to, we think, well, it's just easier if I do it because I know how to do it, but it's not easier because you're taking it on all the time and it's causing you stress. So really look at your mental load before your return as well, and what's involved in that, who's picking it up, and how could that change, because there's definitely ways that it can be changed and flipped up.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Rachel, because that's something that I definitely felt, and we felt that dynamic shift of who's sharing the responsibility, who's doing what jobs. And I think going back to work is a really good opportunity for you to look at the load and see what is going on and sharing it out a little bit more evenly if you can. So I think it's a really...
And I think what's really good about these 2 points is how rare is it that we take that opportunity to take a step back and pause, and then we can do it intentionally. So often we go back and we return to work or start something new and we just go, and then we can get overwhelmed. So I think having these questions, I think for me, knowing this, like Amy, I wish I met you before I returned back to work. I think it really would have helped me to prepare, because I think acknowledging that and understanding that and definitely would have made me feel better and in my identity and helping with my confidence. So I think these are just having that moment of reflection and pause. I think so important, because these questions, honestly, they're helping me now.
Good, I'm glad. And that's the point. Like, I know there's so many that will be, listening and watching the replay, where they have been back in work for quite some time, but we can still be doing this. We don't need to keep going and just keep going at it the way we've always been doing it and stuck in that negative pattern. Like, we can stop if we choose to. We can stop and actually reassess what's working and what's not. And questions like this can really, really help. And I think, to your point, Emma, like, there's this thought that you have just got to slot back into work as it was before, and you slot back in without talking about your reality. And that in itself just causes this just real unrealistic, unsustainable way of working as parents, when we're not talking about it. And it's not going to help. It's not going to help. So we really need to pause, reflect, assess, and talk about it in our workplaces as well, because it's nothing to be we shouldn't be hiding it. We shouldn't be ashamed of what our life experience has involved for however these past few months and what's going on now as well. It's really important to be talking about it.
Such a good point, because I think not only do we, we have this whole new identity and we have the, new set of skills. I think in one sense, I felt like I was trying to brush it under the carpet. Like I've got these two, I've got this whole set of responsibilities and all these things are going on. But now I'm obviously much more loud about it. And I realize that is a positive thing. So I think that's such a good point.
We need to normalize it, right? Yeah. Because if we're feeling like it, you bet your bottom dollar that person sat next to you, if they're a parent, they're probably feeling like it too. So I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can share ways in which we can improve this and share that responsibility, then hopefully things, even if we can't break the system, things will get better in that way if we can try and do what we can, like you say, in your own control. So if we move on to your last point, I know we flipped it around, but it would be great to know then, once people are back in work, once mothers are back in work, how can you be more confident to advocate for what you need in the workplace? Because I know that's something is a really tricky thing to do.
Yeah, and I mean it leads nicely from what we've literally just been talking about there, about talking and opening up the conversation, and sharing your reality, because as I said, we do fall into this trap and this conditioned way of being that you go back into work and you just get on with it and you return as the woman you were and nothing has changed, and you just try to keep up with everything, and it's just not possible to do it like that. It's not sustainable, and that eventually is going to lead to burnout as well and all types of things. So we need to, when you've that sort of work of reflecting on yourself, really getting to grips with how you've evolved, it's then about bringing that, as I said, into the workplace, and rather than hiding it, it's sharing it. Let's talk about it. How have you changed? And let's not play it down. Like we don't want to come in and say, oh, you're sleepless nights, and like just talking about the obvious stuff of being a mum and being a parent. Let's change the narrative around and talk about, well, actually, these past 9 months, I've just learned to be a top negotiator. We can negotiate unbelievable situations, which, it's been in an environment of a home and with a child, but you can transfer that into a workplace. You can think about, how can I use that with a stakeholder or, whoever it might be. It's usable. And I think we so often shy away and we hide, and we think this is something that's a liability to the workplace, but it's not. It's a highly valuable skills and assets that workplaces need. So first of all, I think it's about conversation. Okay, it's about opening up that with your manager. And sometimes, unfortunately, we go into workplaces where the managers maybe aren't as supportive and the workplace isn't sure how to support a woman and a parent coming back into work. So don't wait for them to start that conversation. Don't wait for them to put the meetings in your diary. Be the one to take that, be proactive, put the meetings in yourself, tell them what you want to be talking about. And ahead of that, it's all about preparing for it. So the more prepared you are for that conversation, the more confident you're going to feel stepping into that. So really prepare for, what do you want to update them on in terms of what's changed in your life? What are the skills, the strengths that you have come to the surface, since you've become a parent, and you think are going to be of value to your manager, to your team, to your workplace? And how have you changed? Just share that reality. So really think about everything that has changed. What do you think is going to be, useful to share with them? And what are your needs as well? So, there's so many sort of boundaries and needs that you have that are going to help you to show up fully and to your best when you're back in work. So whether that's needing to do the school runs, whether that's, you know, wanting to be there for important moments, or just, you know, some sort of flexibility, or protecting your lunch hours, protecting your bedtimes, because those elements are important to you, and they're going to help you. If you've got that time, they're going to help you to then show up more in the moments you are in your role as well. So really think about, what are your needs? What is going to support you to show up fully and show up your best? Have that ready. But then the way you frame that in a conversation as well is also going to help your confidence, and it's going to help it to land better. So, you know, when you're thinking about what your needs are, share the context of that more. So it's not just about what your needs are, it's about, how do these needs impact your performance? How do they impact your team? How do they impact the outcome and the results for your company? You know, it's, you know, these things are what you ladies are doing to help shape the workday. That is making sure that parents can show up for their family, feel fulfilled by that, and show up then even more in the workplace as well, because we're having our needs met, you know. So it's not just about you, it's a win-win for everyone, you know, and it's communicating it and framing it in that way as well. So really being prepared for those conversations, I'd say, is really important, and not being scared to put that time in the meeting, the time in the diary, the meetings in the diary, and start that conversation off.
Because we do have a question which is quite specific, but actually everything you've shared, I think, will answer that question. So we had a question that was for tips on requesting a salary increase after maternity leave, or negotiating the same salary if you need part-time hours. So it sounds like, you know, like you say, showing up, creating that business case, not just for you, but for them, coming to the meeting with those things first are really important. Is there anything else that you think in terms of salary that could be really helpful?
I mean, yeah, everything you've just said there, Amy, and what I've discussed, I think it's really, yeah, coming prepared to that meeting and showcasing how you've evolved, all the skills that you have that are an asset to that team and are helping you to show up fully in that role, and how, showing as well that you're taking into consideration your manager's needs and what your manager is driving for and the outcomes they're needing is really important for that conversation as well. You know, showing that you're taking into consideration their worries, their concerns, what their drivers are to create success for, you know, the team and the business as a whole. Really taking into consideration that in the conversation is important. But yeah, in terms of that salary increase, I think it's showing up prepared with everything, your assets, your skills, your strengths, the work that you've put in over time to show, you know, what impact you've had and what you plan to have as well going forwards. You know, really show that you're back with intention, and this is what you plan to deliver in the ways that you want to work, and how you think that's going to work, you know. So show intention and how you're going to create impact over those next few months that, you know, that you're initially back, and that can really, you know, build a lovely business plan and case point for why that salary increase should be, you know, should be approved. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think that's really, really key and valid. And I think also things like you said, what you need, you know, if you need to have additional childcare, you know, thinking about the cost, and that's what you're building into. Actually, this is why I need a salary increase, because if you want me to work those extra hours, then I'm going to need to build that into my cost of living. So
yeah,
thinking about the why, and getting them to think that perspective too, I think is really, could be helpful.
But I
absolutely.
think it's really helpful to frame it in the sense of like, how do you actually do it? Because it can be very daunting when you are putting yourself out there, and it's all very well and good thinking, okay, I'm going to put the boundaries in place, and then you're ready to do it and you're like, okay, I'm going to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
But to know, to think about it strategically, you know, like essentially you're putting a business case forward. There are so many advantages of doing this, so it is really helpful to know to you're not just pulling up your big girl pants. You are thinking this is genuinely beneficial for them, and to think about it in terms of that strategic base. And I just like to say, in terms of transferable skills, I was laughing when you said earlier about the transferable skills, because I literally used, like, when you're asking your children, okay, would you like to have this and would you like to have this? I literally use them with stakeholders. It's just so true.
It is, isn't it?
So true.
It is. There's so many skills. Everything we do as a mother is used in the workplace, just in a different format or different perspective. So it's so true. But unfortunately it's not the case where it's seen like that. So we need to change our mindset, reframe our mindset as to how we see ourselves. And we're not a burden, we're not a liability, we've got incredible leadership skills from this life experience. And then, it's really sharing that and not shying away from it in the conversations you're having with your teams and with your manager. And think about, look for the opportunities as well, like where you can stretch those strengths, because there's ways of mentoring or leading skill sharing sessions, different, proposing different ways of working within the team that you think is going to be beneficial. So, stretch the strengths that you've built from this life experience and use them in the workplace. And it really then highlights your impact and involvement within the team and how you are back with intention, in that role.
That's really helpful, Rachel. Before we wrap up, we do have one question I've seen pop up. So it's to ask, would you mention parental leave in your CV when applying for a new job and when returning to work? Would you put those things, would you be confident to put those things at the forefront of your application when you are going back to work?
Yeah, absolutely. But we need to, I know it's a really scary thing to do, because sometimes you think it's going to impact, how an employer might see you. And everybody has different views on that time of leave. But we need to start flipping the script. We need to start changing the narrative. And as we've just been talking about there, that time of leave isn't time off where you've been doing nothing. You've been building skills and assets that are invaluable to a company, a workplace. So yeah, absolutely, I'd be putting that on my CV, and I'd be showing up to that interview sharing what that time has taught me and built for me, and how I'm going to bring that into the workplace and do things differently. So we definitely don't want to be shying away from that, for sure.
No, we can agree more. And actually, we often say, if an employer doesn't like the look of that, then that's a huge red flag, and you probably don't want to work for them anyway.
Exactly.
So if nothing else, it helps in that way. Okay, Rachel. So thank you so much for all of your tips. Have you got one final piece of advice that you'd like to share with everybody before I can tell them where we can find you?
I think just on that last point, I was just going to say, remember that you're interviewing employers as well, as much as they're interviewing you. So like you just said there, if someone doesn't see that parental leave, that maternity leave, whatever it has been, as a positive and as a pro, then it absolutely is a red flag. So you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. But yeah, just the final point is, your return to work and that experience and that transition can be made so much better from taking time to really reflect, pause, and prepare for it. And even though it can feel incredibly overwhelming, that preparation time, that reflection time, can really help to put you in good stead for what that transition then ends up being like. And really just be confident and speak up about your experiences, and speak about them as assets, not liabilities. So yeah.
You got too much knowledge, Rachel. Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful in a short period of time. So if anybody would like to find out more about you, or find out more for your services, or what you can do to help them rebuild their confidence, then they can come and find you on @Mums Juggling Careers on Instagram, and they can learn more about you.
Yes.
So thank you so much again.
Thank
And
you so
we'll
much.
speak to you again soon.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
see
I'm
you soon.
so ready to go, Rachel. I feel all pumped up.
Come on,
Go.
You're like that peacock. Like, look at me and all my assets. Look what I'm bringing to the table.
Absolutely, ladies. Let's go. Let's break the world.
Absolutely.
Oh, so lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.